Her phone buzzed, but the name wasn't saved. Joan hadn't heard her son's voice in 2 years, not since he blocked her mid-sentence. Now, out of nowhere, a single word appeared. Mom? He'd seen her on the news, smiling in a volunteer apron, steadier than he remembered. By morning, she'd replay the message 10 times, but respond only once, because forgiveness wasn't instant, it was earned, and she finally knew her worth. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. His name flashed and disappeared from my caller ID. I saw it for less than a second. Michael. There and gone. No ring, no voicemail, just a flicker of a name I hadn't said out loud in weeks, but had whispered in my sleep more times than I could count. I froze, thumb mid-scroll, pulse slamming against my ribs. I tapped the screen. No recent calls, nothing logged. Had I imagined it? I blinked down at the device in my palm, suddenly aware of how tight I was gripping it. The same phone I'd stared at after our last conversation, if you could call it that. He said I crossed a line, that I made things harder. And then, click, blocked. That was 2 years ago. Since then, his absence had taken up more space than his presence ever had. I stared at the empty call log and felt that old ache tighten around my throat. My hand hovered above the screen, tempted to try calling him back, just to see, but I didn't. Instead, I picked up my journal from the coffee table. The pages were worn, swollen with ink and shame and questions that had no one to answer them. I flipped past entries that still stung to read, notes from birthdays I wasn't invited to, holidays spent alone, pictures I saw only because someone else tagged his wife. I stopped on a blank page, set the pen down like I was signing something official, and wrote slowly, "One more try." The ink bled just a little, like it knew how much it cost me. Buzz. The sound cut through me. My phone lit up again. I lunged for it. Unknown number, no message, no ID. I held it in both hands, as if steadying it would steady me. My finger hovered over call back, but I couldn't press it. I was tired of chasing ghosts. I set the phone down gently, then sat still, watching it. Like it might move again. It didn't. I reached for my mug, cold. Of course, everything in this house cooled too fast lately. Then a decision. Sudden. Clear. Tomorrow I'd see someone. I'd stop talking to pages and start talking to a person. I found the number buried in an old email. Mira, the counselor from the church outreach program, the one whose voice had once calmed me from across a crowded hall. I dialed. 3 rings. Then her voicemail. "You've reached Counselor Mira. I'm not available to take your call, but I'm ready when you are." I closed my eyes. "I think I am," I whispered after the beep. "It's Joan. I'm ready." I hung up and sat back, surprised by the calm that followed. Not peace, not quite, but something close. Then, buzz. My phone lit up. Same unknown number. It didn't go to voicemail this time. It just kept ringing. And without thinking, I pressed answer. I replayed my messages, each one asking for forgiveness. The call had ended before I even found my voice. Whoever it was, didn't speak. Just breath, soft, uncertain. Then the line went dead. I sat there for what felt like hours, phone in hand, my ear still warm from the silence. I wanted to believe it was Michael, that maybe he didn't hang up in anger, just fear. But belief was a dangerous thing in my hands. It had gotten me hurt more than once. I went into my call history, still just unknown. No details, no second chances. So I turned to the only place where he still existed, my voicemails. I didn't mean to open them. My thumb just wandered there like muscle memory. I'd left too many, some short, some long, some when I was clear-eyed and strong, others when I'd had wine and resolve and loneliness for dinner. The first one played, my voice thin, desperate. "Hey, sweetheart, it's just me. Just checking in. I hope you're okay." The next, "Michael, I know you're upset, but I'm still your mother. That doesn't change." And another, Happy birthday. I left a gift at the old porch. I don't know if you saw it. I hope it fit. Each word landed like a bruise. I hadn't realized how many I'd sent until the counter hit 15. 15 voicemails. 15 small windows into the ache of a mother trying not to disappear. Tears tracked my face quietly, as if even they were embarrassed to show up again. I closed the app and opened the journal instead. This time, I didn't write a journal entry. I wrote a letter. Michael, I began, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I doubt I'll send it. But there are things I need to say somewhere or I'll go mad. I poured it out, all the things I'd rehearsed, in my head, yelled into the pillows, whispered to Emma over coffee. I told him I was sorry. But not only that, I told him I had started to remember who I was before all of this, that I missed him terribly. But I was learning that missing someone doesn't mean you have to destroy yourself to get them back. When I finished, I didn't fold it, I didn't burn it. I just let it sit there, like a ghost finally named. Emma came by with soup around noon. She noticed the tissues before she noticed the smile. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm in process," I said. She smiled, knowing exactly what that meant. We sat in the kitchen while she stirred lentils and told me about a book she was reading on boundaries. She spoke like a woman who had learned the hard way to protect her peace. "You can still love someone and not let them wreck you," she said without looking up from the pot. "I know," I said, and for once I meant it. That night, I had a memory. Vivid, uninvited, Michael's graduation day. Dave had stood beside him, arms slung around his shoulder, both of them laughing in the golden light. Dave had looked proud, almost young again. I hadn't thought of that day in years, hadn't dared. It stayed with me, that image, like a postcard from a version of my life I once believed in. I woke the next morning to birdsong instead of buzzing. No calls, no flickering names, just air and light and choice. I decided I wouldn't call him for a week. No messages, no checking, no circling back. Instead, I drove to the community center and signed up to volunteer. They needed help organizing donations, clothes, canned goods, shoes with only a little wear. It felt good to move my hands, to fold and sort and lift, to be useful to someone who didn't know me well enough to blame me. By the time I got home, my phone was still silent, but my chest felt different. Lighter somehow, like something had finally unclenched. I turned on the TV, more for background noise than anything. Then the screen caught me mid-step, a news alert. Local hero interviewed Liv at 4. And there, across the screen, smiling in front of a community shelter, was Michael. I stood in front of the camera and unexpectedly found my voice. It started with a clipboard and a folding chair. I was stacking sweaters at the donation table, secondhand knits in almost new condition, when a woman with a lanyard approached. Her hair was pulled back in a news-ready ponytail, and she smiled like she knew she was interrupting something important. "Would you mind answering a few questions on camera? Just a short interview for the local station." My first instinct was to say no. I didn't want my face on anyone's screen, didn't want people to look at me and wonder who I had been, or worse, who I had failed to be. But something in her tone was kind, and maybe I wanted to be seen, just a little. Not as the woman with a silent phone, but as someone standing upright, doing something that mattered. I said yes. They gave me 10 minutes to freshen up. Not that I had much to freshen. I ran a hand through my hair, pinched a little color into my cheeks, and stepped outside into the soft, late-afternoon sun. The camera wasn't big or threatening. The questions were simple. Why do you volunteer? What do you hope to give back? I thought about giving some practiced answer, something clean, respectable. But what came out was raw, honest. I come here because I got tired of waiting to be needed. I wanted to offer what I had, even if it wasn't much. Turns out it's enough for now. The reporter blinked, then nodded slowly. That was beautiful. I didn't feel beautiful. I felt real, and strangely, proud. That evening I didn't mention the interview to Emma or even Mira. I wasn't expecting it to air so soon or at all. I went home, made a cup of tea, folded laundry with the TV humming in the background. Then I heard my own voice. I looked up. There I was, on the screen, framed by sunlight and boxes of canned goods. My posture was straighter than I remembered. My voice steadier. I wanted to offer what I had. I sat on the edge of the couch, breath caught in my chest. By the time the segment ended, my phone was already buzzing. Emma texted first. "Are you trying to make me cry in my own kitchen?" Then Mira. "You're helping more than just this town, Joan." That was brave. I didn't know what to do with their words. They felt warmer than I was ready to receive. But the one message that didn't come, the one I still waited for like a bad habit, was his. No Michael. No Dave. And yet, the fear was no longer that they wouldn't reach out. It was that maybe, even now, they still wouldn't see me. That maybe I could pour my heart into a camera lens, broadcast it to 100 living rooms, and he'd still look right past me. Later, I replayed the clip on my phone. Watched myself speak, frame by frame. I didn't look small. I didn't sound desperate. And my voice, that voice I thought I'd lost when he stopped calling, was clear. I sat back, pulled the throw blanket over my legs, and let the sound of my own words fill the quiet. Then, just as I was about to power down for the night, ding, a notification, one missed call. I sat upright. Caller ID, blocked number. And this time, it wasn't silence that filled the room. It was the racing of my heart. He called, but didn't say Mom. The ring broke the stillness like a dropped glass. Again, blocked number. I stared, frozen, phone lit in my hand. This time, I didn't hesitate. I pressed answer. The line connected, and for a few seconds, all I heard was air. Not dead silence. There was life in it. Breathing, tentative, like someone holding the phone slightly away, debating. Then, one word. Hi. Not hi, Mom. Not, it's me. Just hi. I closed my eyes. The voice was softer than I remembered, thinner, but it was him. I knew it like I knew the rhythm of my own breath. "Michael," I whispered. The breath caught. Then a click. Gone. The screen flashed. Call ended. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear like maybe the air still carried him. It hadn't been a dream. My call log confirmed it. 1 minute, 12 seconds, but I'd only spoken 2 words. I placed the phone face down on the couch cushion. My hands were trembling, but my chest, strangely, wasn't. There was something like stillness building inside me, like weather about to change. I didn't sleep much. I didn't replay the call. I didn't write about it. I just waited, wide-eyed in the dark, tracing the shape of his voice over and over in my mind. When morning came, it brought more than light. It brought a text. "Unknown number. Saw you on TV." 5 words, no punctuation, but clean, uncluttered, not cold, not angry, hopeful. I sat with it a long time, smiling like a secret had been whispered just to me. He hadn't called me Mom, not yet, but he saw me. I didn't reply, not right away. I needed to sit in that recognition, because for so long I hadn't existed to him at all. I walked to the window and watched the light shift across the neighbor's driveway. Watched a squirrel drag a crust of bread twice its size up a tree trunk. Watched the world behave like nothing had changed. But everything had. I got dressed, brushed my hair, put on a pair of earrings I hadn't touched since Christmas 2 years ago, the ones he gave me when he still believed in calling every Sunday. I poured coffee, black and quiet, then drove to the community center, not because I needed to work, but because I needed to be upright, visible. Mira was waiting when I arrived. I must have looked different, lighter or taller, or maybe just less hidden, because she smiled before I even said hello. "Want to talk?" she asked gently, motioning to the empty office nearby. I nodded. Once inside, I told her everything. Not just about the call or the text, but about the look in his voice, the soft hi, the cliffhanger of a sun reaching across silence, not quite ready to land. She listened without interrupting, let the air breathe between my sentences. When I finished, I looked at her, eyes still damp. "It wasn't much," I said. "But it was real," she replied. I nodded again. Then she leaned in, voice lower now, firmer. "This is your moment, Joan." I blinked. "You've waited, you've worked, you've wept. But now something opened. The door's not wide yet, but it's unlocked. You get to choose. Step through or stand still." And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of the light. 3 small words changed my world. "Saw you on TV." I stared at his message so long I forgot to blink. "Saw you on TV." 5 words. That was all. But my entire body felt it, like I'd stepped into a current I hadn't known I was standing in. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I didn't want to scare it off. The thread felt too thin, like even breathing too loud might snap it. I picked up the phone, then put it back down. Did that 5 more times. When Emma dropped by with groceries, she found me pacing the kitchen in my slippers, phone in hand like it was an animal I didn't quite trust. "Is it him?" she asked, gently. I nodded. "Do you know what you're going to say?" "No," I whispered. "You don't need the perfect words. You just need the real ones." She unpacked a bag of oranges and almond milk like it was any other Tuesday, but her presence grounded me, made the air feel safe enough to move through. Later, when the house was still, I typed out my reply slowly. "That means the world. Love you." I hovered over send for a full minute, then closed my eyes, pressed my thumb down, and released it into the void. The little bubble appeared immediately. Read, 8:27 p.m. Then nothing. No typing dots, no follow-up. Just that small, haunting acknowledgement that someone had opened my heart and hadn't yet decided what to do with it. Dinner burned. I hardly noticed. I chewed through overcooked rice and half a roasted carrot in silence. The taste didn't matter. Nothing tasted like anything that night except waiting. I logged my volunteer hours online, typed the same number twice before realizing I was staring through the screen instead of at it. I kept refreshing my messages, even though I knew how needy it made me feel. But this wasn't about neediness. This was about longing, a mother's ache to be let back in, even just a crack. I scrolled through old photos while the dishwasher hummed behind me, ones from camping trips, birthday parties, snapshots I wasn't in. The last one we took together sat in a forgotten album. His smile was genuine. My eyes were tired, even then. I shut my phone. Didn't want the memory of that distance to steal whatever closeness had just begun to sprout. It was nearly midnight when I checked my messages one last time, and there it was. 3 words. "Missed hearing you." That was it. No punctuation, no emojis, just silence wrapped around a sentence that shattered me. I put a hand over my mouth, like something might fall out if I didn't. It was more than kindness. It was admission. That he had listened, that he had felt. That part of him, maybe a small part, still carried my voice in the soft folds of memory. I didn't know whether to cry or collapse or scream. So I just stood there, heart pounding so loudly it made my ears ring. Because for the first time in 2 years, my son was talking to me. Read at 2:17 p.m., and my world tilted again. It sat there on the screen like a verdict. Read at 2:17 p.m. No reply, no dots, no soft echo of hope, just a timestamp, etched in quiet. And suddenly the message that had made me tremble with joy hours before now twisted. Did he regret sending it? Was it pity? Or worse, obligation? I pressed my hand to my forehead like maybe I could push the questions back in. But they were leaking through everything now, into the kitchen tiles, the air vents, the worn stitching of my sleeves. Emma found me on the couch, knees drawn up, face buried in a throw pillow I hadn't washed since fall. She didn't ask what happened. She just sat next to me and rubbed my back the way she used to when I cried over the voicemail silence. "I thought it meant something," I finally whispered. "It does," she said, "but even good things take time." I shook my head. I'm tired of time. It just keeps passing, and I keep waiting for the moment it delivers something different. Emma didn't argue. She just stayed. And sometimes, that's the only kindness that matters. Later that afternoon, Mira called. Her voice came through steady, warm. I wanted to check in, not just about Michael, but about you. I'm okay, I lied. There was a pause. Then, is this still about connection? Or is it about being chosen? I said nothing. Joan, she continued, what you're doing is brave, but make sure you're not handing your worth to someone else to confirm it. That landed like a small explosion in my chest. I closed my eyes and saw our last fight, mine and Michael's. Not a shouting match, just sharp words and wounded pauses. It was his birthday. I'd posted a photo of him as a baby without asking. He called furious, said I had no right, no boundaries, that I didn't listen when he said he needed space. I said something about being his mother. He said something about control. Then, click. Silence. That was the real wound. Not just the distance, but the idea that I'd made it worse. I wanted to text again, to explain, to soften whatever memory he carried of me. But instead, I grabbed my keys and drove to the center. I stayed longer than usual, sorted every coat, stocked every shelf. It felt good to be useful to people who weren't questioning their love for me, the kind of people who said, "Thank you," with their eyes, even when their mouths were too tired. When I reached for a box of pasta, a voice behind me said, "We saw you on the news, Joan." I turned. It was Nora from down the street. Her grandkids had played soccer with Michael years ago. "You looked strong," she added, not kindly, not cruelly, just like someone who saw me and wanted me to know it. I smiled, small but real. It hit me then. This wasn't just about Michael. Others had seen me too. My story wasn't limited to one broken line. It echoed wider than that. So that night, instead of drafting another message, I wrote nothing. I didn't reach, I didn't chase. I sat still, full of something steadier than desperation. A new kind of quiet. One I had chosen. I folded laundry, brushed my teeth, climbed into bed with a book I barely read. Then, buzz. My phone screen lit in the dark. Missed call, blocked number, and for the first time I didn't panic. I listened for what might come next. I confessed to Emma everything I hadn't told anyone else. We sat in the church basement, the room they used for free counseling on Tuesdays. The folding chairs were cold, and the air had that faint must of old hymnals and lemon disinfectant. Emma held her tea with both hands like it anchored her, and I finally told the truth. Not just the edited version I'd shared before, but the quiet, guilty pieces I kept hidden behind polite smiles and deflections. I keep thinking if I do enough, say the right thing, stay visible, maybe he'll love me again. Emma didn't speak right away. She just set her cup down and looked at me like she had all the time in the world. I used to do that with Dave, I continued. When he was 15 and started slamming doors, I'd bake his favorite muffins and pretend things were fine. But that wasn't love. That was managing. Emma nodded. And this? This feels the same, except worse because I should know better now. I let the silence settle between us. I think, I said slowly, I need to stop. At least for a while. Emma's voice was gentle. How long is a while? 2 weeks. She smiled, proud but not pitying. That's not nothing. Back home, I opened my journal. The pages knew too much by now, had soaked up too many letters I never sent. I wrote another one anyway. This time I didn't sign it with love. I signed it with truth. I miss you. I forgive you. I'm sorry. Then I stared at the words, and instead of closing the notebook like usual, I tore the page out, folded it once, and placed it in the shredder. It hissed and curled like a leaf in fire. For the first time, I didn't feel lighter afterward. I felt cleared, like a window someone finally washed. That night I had a flash of memory so vivid it knocked the breath out of me. Dave, 17, furious, had broken curfew again. I was pacing the living room in my robe, rehearsing lectures. He stormed in, reeking of beer, and I launched straight into the script. His shoulders tensed, his mouth twitched, and just before he turned away, I caught it, the shame beneath the anger. But I didn't stop. I kept talking, trying to fix what needed quiet. That was the first time he stopped telling me things. I opened my eyes, still in bed, Mira's voice in my head from earlier. Holding back takes more courage than pouring out. I hadn't replied then, but now I whispered, I believe you. The house was still. A pot of soup cooled on the stove. The world outside looked dipped in gold. I didn't check my phone all day. I didn't carry it from room to room. I volunteered, read, did a puzzle I found under the stairs. Every moment was edged with temptation, but I didn't reach. At dusk, I sat on the porch, watching the wind brush through the tree line, leaves flaring amber before drifting. Then the buzz. The phone vibrated once on the armrest beside me. I didn't grab it right away. I watched it, let the silence expand around the screen. Then I picked it up. Missed call. Blocked number. But this time something felt off. I didn't feel flattered or hopeful. I felt unsettled. Because this time, I wasn't sure it was Michael. He stood there. No words, just his eyes. It happened at twilight. I was still on the porch, the sky painted in streaks of dusty lavender and gold when I felt it, before I saw him. A change in the air, a pressure shift, like the universe was holding its breath. Then I looked up. Dave was standing at the bottom of the steps, not a ghost, not a memory, not a name on a screen. Just him. In a jacket I hadn't seen before, collar turned up against the breeze. His face was older, tired in places that hadn't been tired the last time I saw it. But it was him, my son. His hands were jammed deep into his coat pockets. He didn't wave, didn't smile, but his eyes found mine and didn't move. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, softly, he said, "Hi." That word carried more weight than 100 conversations. I stood, not too fast. I didn't want to spook whatever fragile thread had brought him here. "You want to come in?" I asked. He hesitated, looked past me toward the door like it might vanish if he blinked, then nodded. Inside, I didn't ask if he was hungry. Didn't ask if he wanted tea. I just made it. 2 mugs, honey stirred in, no milk. He took the one I set in front of him but didn't sip. We sat at the table, the one with the scratch down the middle from the year Michael tried carving his initials and blamed the neighbor's kid. He ran a hand through his hair. "I've been driving around for 30 minutes, didn't even mean to end up here." "I'm glad you did." He gave a short, broken breath that might have been a laugh. "I didn't know how to start," he said. "Didn't think you'd even answer the door." "I didn't think you'd knock." He looked down at the tea, swirled it with the spoon I'd placed quietly beside him. "I've been drowning, Mom. For longer than I want to admit. Work, home, the kids, everything, and the guilt. It just layered, until reaching out felt impossible." I didn't speak, just watched his fingers move, then still. He went on. "Then I saw your interview, and I remembered how strong you were before I made everything so damn complicated, and I thought maybe, just maybe, if you could keep going, maybe I could too." My breath caught, but I didn't let it show. He looked up. "I've blamed you for a lot, some of it fair, some of it just easier than looking at myself." I shook my head gently. "You don't owe me an apology." His voice dropped. "I think I do." Silence settled again, but it was different now, thicker, earnest. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "You don't have to," I replied. "Just be here." He looked around, taking in the chipped edges of the cabinets, the worn rug under his chair, things he once stomped across, things he hadn't seen in years. "I'm scared," he whispered, "that I waited too long, that there's too much between us now." "There's only time," I said, "and you're here now." His mouth opened, then closed. He swallowed hard. "And then," he asked, voice cracked and breaking, "am I forgiven?" My hand reached out, palm down on the table. Not to pull him, just to offer presence. He didn't touch it, but he didn't look away. We stayed like that, between the past and something just shy of future, not healed, not whole, but human. Then he whispered it again, so low I almost missed it. "Mom, And I let the name wrap around me like an old quilt, heavy with memory, warmer than I deserved. She hugged him first, and felt years of tension melt. He said it again. "Mom." And this time, I stood, walked around the table slowly, uncertainly. He didn't move, just sat there, eyes upturned, waiting for my next breath like it might decide everything. I placed a hand on his shoulder. He blinked, startled but still. And then, without asking permission, from him or myself, I leaned down and wrapped my arms around him. His body stiffened for a beat. Then he exhaled. And in that long, trembling breath, I felt it. The armor peeling away. The brittle weight of our silences dropping piece by piece. He didn't sob, neither did I. But something between us did. When I pulled back, I kept my hands on his shoulders for a moment longer. Let him see I wasn't afraid to touch this version of him, the man grown out of my boy. He looked down at his hands. I kept thinking about what you'd say, what you'd want to fix. I was ready for the sermon. I smiled. I retired from that pulpit. He gave a genuine laugh. Not loud, not long, but real. "I've felt ashamed," he said. "Ashamed that I couldn't call, that I let things get this far. And the more time passed, the more it felt like I'd have to come back perfect or not at all." "You don't have to be perfect," I said. "You just have to be honest." He nodded slowly. "Then here's honesty. I'm still mad at parts of you, still wrestling, but I miss you more than I fear you." That sentence cracked something deep in me, not in pain, just truth. I didn't answer with a speech, just reached for his mug, topped off his tea and said, "Good." He looked at me, longer this time, then down at the cup between his palms. "Boundaries," he said suddenly. "Do we talk about that?" I raised an eyebrow. "You want to?" He shrugged. "I think I need to." "Then we will," I said, "in pieces. As we go." That seemed to settle something in him. He nodded again and sat back in the chair. Just then, the front door creaked open and Emma stepped in, arms full of groceries and a bag of takeout containers. She froze when she saw him. Her lips parted but no words came. He stood, slowly. "Hey, Emma." She set the bags down gently and walked forward like someone approaching a wild animal she didn't want to startle. Then she hugged him. And this time, he hugged back without hesitation. The three of us sat in the living room, takeout between us, Thai food and forgiveness, laughter in thin layers. We didn't talk about everything, just enough. "I want to stay," Dave said softly, after a long pause. "Not tonight. I mean, in this." He looked at both of us, eyes clearer than I remembered. "I want to be part of this family again." Emma's hand found mine under the coffee table. I squeezed it once. "Then we'll start small," I said. He nodded, and then, ding-dong, the doorbell. We all froze. It was late. No one expected. Emma's breath caught. Her eyes darted toward the door, then back to me. "Who?" she started, but I was already standing, because the way Emma's hand tightened around my wrist, whatever waited on the other side wasn't routine. He yelled I didn't listen. I finally heard him. The knock still echoed in my chest when I opened the door, but it was just a delivery. A neighbor's misdelivered package. Nothing urgent, nothing emotional. Still, the silence that followed pressed in, tighter than before. Back inside, Dave had moved to the armchair. Emma was refilling tea. I set the package on the table, heart slowly recalibrating. Dave was quiet again, but not withdrawn. Thoughtful. His eyes tracked me as I sat across from him, waiting. "I keep hearing your voice from that night," he said softly. My breath hitched. "The fight," he clarified. "The big one, in the driveway." I nodded, though the memory was already unspooling in my mind. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You said I was throwing everything away, that I was lost." I looked down. I remembered the exact words. I remembered how sharp they'd sounded, how final. "I told you," he continued, "that all I ever wanted was for you to just listen, to not fix me, just see me." His voice cracked on the word see. And I saw him now, not just the man in front of me, but the teenager I'd missed, the one I'd steamrolled with love disguised as control, the one who needed presence, not direction. I closed my eyes. I remember yelling back, he said, "Told you I was done, that you'd never change." "You were right," I said quietly. He blinked. "I didn't listen, Dave. I tried to parent the fear out of you instead of trusting you with your own struggle." He looked at me like I'd just given him a language he hadn't known he needed. "I failed you," I continued, tears pressing behind my eyes. "Not in what I gave, but in what I didn't hear. And that failure lived in the walls of this house long after you left." Emma had gone still in the kitchen. The only sound was the kettle winding down. Dave didn't speak. He stood up, and then, to my surprise, he walked across the room, knelt by my chair, and took my hand. "I needed to hear that," he whispered. His head dropped to our entwined fingers, shoulders shaking. I rested my free hand over his and let the tears fall. Not loudly, not theatrically, just honestly. We sat like that for a long while, our grief cooling between us like the untouched tea. Then Dave looked up, a tiny smile on his face, fragile as blown glass. "I don't know what this is," he said, "but it feels real." "It is." He nodded once. "Good." Then, buzz. His phone. We both jumped slightly. He pulled it out of his pocket and stared at the screen. The smile vanished. He didn't say a word. Just stood. "Give me a minute," he said. I nodded, though everything inside me screamed, "Wait. Don't go." He stepped out onto the porch, phone pressed to his ear. And I sat still, heart thundering again, because whatever voice waited on the other end of that call could decide what came next. He didn't want handouts, but he took hope. The door clicked shut behind him. He came back inside slower this time, quieter. Something in his expression had changed, like the call had pulled at a thread he'd been trying to keep tied. He sat back down without a word. I waited. Then finally, he looked up. "That was my landlord," he said. "I'm behind 2 months. He's been patient, but—" He shrugged. "Patience only lasts so long when you have a mortgage." I nodded, saying nothing, not because I didn't care, but because I knew he didn't want pity. Dave rubbed the side of his neck. "I've applied to everything. 2 interviews, 1 rejection, 1 silence." His voice didn't crack, but his posture did. "I'm not asking you for anything," he added quickly. "I'm not here to cash in on guilt." "You're not," I said. He looked at me sideways, suspicious at first. Then his shoulders dropped a fraction. "I do know someone," I said gently. "Emma's company has openings in logistics. She said they're always looking for steady hands." He didn't respond immediately, just stared at the wall. "I don't want favors," he murmured. "It's not a favor," I replied. "It's a bridge, and it only works if you walk across it." He turned the tea mug in his hands. "Would she really recommend me?" "She already offered," I said. "Weeks ago." He looked at me. "You didn't tell me." "I was waiting for you to be ready." That stopped him. His eyes searched mine, as if trying to find the strings I might be tugging behind the kindness, but there weren't any. He nodded slowly. "Okay. Give her my name." A pause, then quieter. "Thanks." Later, we found ourselves in the kitchen again, this time cooking, side by side, like we had when he was 12 and obsessed with garlic bread and spaghetti. He chopped onions, I stirred sauce. Neither of us spoke much. We didn't need to. The air was thick with quiet memory, laughter from old dinners, arguments never quite resolved. But under it all, something new was growing. A rhythm. When the food was done, we sat down. The same table, the same scratches, but something had changed. "You remember that trip we took to the lake?" I asked. He looked up. "The one where the canoe flipped?" I laughed. "You screamed like we'd hit an iceberg." He rolled his eyes. "I was 9. You were dramatic." He grinned. It wasn't a deep conversation, but it was the kind of lightness we hadn't allowed ourselves in years. After the plates were cleared, I poured tea again and leaned against the counter. "Dave," I said, "do you want to rebuild things? Slowly?" He didn't answer right away, but then he stood, walked over to where I was standing, and said, without hesitation, "Yes." His voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It landed like a promise. I didn't hug him this time. I just smiled, the kind that starts behind the eyes and travels slowly through the skin. He took out his phone to check the time. And then it buzzed. He glanced at the screen, eyebrows rising. He handed it to me with a small, stunned look. Text from Emma. "Mom, he got the interview tomorrow." And just like that, hope became something with a deadline. Our small lunch changed everything, without a headline. The diner wasn't fancy, just the kind of place with laminated menus and cracked vinyl booths, but to Dave it might as well have been a stage. He adjusted his collar 3 times before we even walked inside. Emma was already there, seated across from a woman in her 40s with silver-streaked hair and a clipboard. She smiled the moment we approached. "This must be Dave," she said. He offered a polite handshake. Firm, but not forced. "Nice to meet you." We ordered sandwiches and iced tea, and the conversation started casual. Weather, sports, community news. Emma kept things smooth, guiding the tone gently like a conductor. Then the questions came. Experience, hours, flexibility. Dave didn't overpromise. He didn't inflate his resume. He just spoke plainly, like a man rebuilding from the bones. Emma's boss listened, really listened. By the time the check arrived, she said it. "We'd love to have you part-time, if you're open to it." Dave blinked, then nodded, once. "I am," she smiled. "Great. Let's get things moving this week." He didn't look at me, not until she and Emma headed toward the register. Then he exhaled, slow and shaky, and turned. "Thank you." 2 words, not tossed off, not automatic, real. I nodded. He rubbed his palm on his jeans. "I've had interviews before, but this felt different. Like, someone saw me." I smiled. "Maybe because you let yourself be seen." On the walk home, the sun was low, casting our shadows long across the sidewalk. We didn't rush, didn't fill the space with needless talk. Step by step. "I don't want charity," he said quietly. I stopped walking. He looked at me, hesitant. "I know that," I said. "That's why this worked." He nodded, then added, "I want to earn it." "You are," I said. "You're just not doing it alone anymore." He didn't reply. But the next 10 steps we took were lighter. When we reached the house, he opened the gate for me. "I'll swing by after the paperwork," he said. "Might take a few days. I'll be here." He looked at me. Really looked. "I know." Later that night, I poured tea and sat on the porch, watching the last threads of sunset unravel across the sky. I opened my phone just to see. There, on a local community news site, was a photo. Me, Dave, Emma, walking away from the diner, side by side. Caption, "Local family reunites through second chances," and a sandwich. And for once, the story written about us felt true. Our private moment splashed across the morning paper. The paper was already on the doorstep when I opened the door. I hadn't ordered it, hadn't subscribed in years. But there it was, folded neatly as if placed with intention, a copy of the County Sun, and on the front page below the headline about the mayor's new recycling initiative was a photo I already knew. Me, Emma, Dave, walking from the diner, heads tilted close, our feet caught mid-step like a family in motion. The caption read, "Second chances, one lunch at a time." I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. Inside, the article was short. A community spotlight piece. No names beyond Emma's first and her role at the logistics firm. But the photo told enough of the story to anyone who knew us. Dave hadn't come by yet. I folded the paper and left it on the counter, not hiding it, but not highlighting it either. When he finally arrived, the first thing he saw was the photo. He froze, didn't speak. His shoulders tensed like a held breath. "You saw it," I asked gently. He nodded. Before I left the apartment, my phone buzzed 6 times in 10 minutes. Texts, tags, someone sent me a scan. His jaw tightened. I didn't even know they were taking it. I didn't either. He sat down slowly, picked up the paper, studied it like it might rearrange itself. Emma's text arrived a moment later. "You okay?" Just that. No punctuation. But I heard the care in it. Dave exhaled hard. "It feels too soon." I nodded. "Then it is." He looked at me. "You're not upset?" "It was a beautiful moment," I said. "But it's ours, not theirs. We decide what's next." He stared at the table for a long beat, then gave a slow, reluctant smile. "A few people messaged to say they were proud," he said. "A guy I worked with years ago, a cousin I haven't talked to since Michael was born." "That's something." "Yeah," he said, "but I don't want to become someone's story. I'm not an example. I'm just trying to make things right." "You are." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm not ready to explain myself to people I haven't heard from in years." "Then don't." "But what if silence feels like shame to them?" I paused. "Then they're not listening closely enough." He didn't answer, but he looked at me like the words had reached somewhere deep. That afternoon, we didn't talk about the article again. We painted the back fence instead, laughed when the wind blew the tarp off the mulch, ate lunch on mismatched paper plates, and talked about nothing in particular. But I noticed he kept checking his phone. At one point, he turned the screen toward me. 22 DMS, he muttered. All variations of "so glad to see you back" or "we should catch up." He shook his head. "I didn't do this to become visible," he said. "I know." He looked at the sky, then back at me. "I just wanted peace." "That's still on the table," I said. "We set the pace." He nodded, then stood. "I think I'm gonna log out for a while. Delete the noise." "Good." He took a breath, pulled his phone from his pocket, and one by one I watched him start to disconnect. Facebook, gone. Instagram, gone. Twitter, deleted. The pings stopped. The screen dimmed. Then he looked up at me, tired, but calm. "I need to hear myself again," he said. And as the final app vanished, I realized peace sometimes begins with saying no to the crowd. He walked away, and I didn't chase him. It was a Thursday when Dave said it, without defensiveness, without apology. "I think I need a little room before we do anything public again." I nodded. "Of course." He seemed surprised by how easily the words landed, like he'd been bracing for the old version of me, eager to fill silence, quick to over-reassure. But I didn't explain, or question, or offer a compromise, just met his gaze and held it gently. He exhaled. The next day, we sat on the porch without our phones. It was something we'd started, a ritual that asked nothing but presence, no scrolling, no alerts. Just wind and coffee and breath. We talked about squirrels, about repainting the shed, about nothing really, but the rhythm of our non-urgency said everything. "I like this," he said once. "No pressure." I nodded. "It's ours." Later that week, we walked the trail behind the old elementary school, leaves crunching beneath our feet, breeze threading through the tall grass. We didn't take selfies. We didn't even take our phones. When a jogger passed, recognizing Dave, I watched him stiffen just slightly. But he didn't turn away. He just nodded and kept walking. Every small step was a kind of healing, a quiet unlearning. Back home, I opened my journal. I didn't write about grief or longing. I wrote about that nod on the trail, about the way he passed me the pepper without asking, about how, during dinner, he told a joke and actually laughed at his own punchline. Small joys, quiet victories, not declarations, but signs. We began volunteering at the center again, together, but not joined at the hip. He worked the donation shelf. I sorted intake. We crossed paths in the break room, refilled coffee for each other without comment. It was easy, honest. One afternoon, a woman I barely knew said, "You two have a calmness about you." I smiled but didn't explain. We weren't calm, we were cautious. But cautious could be sacred, too. That evening we sat on opposite ends of the couch. I crocheted. He skimmed a paperback novel he hadn't touched since college. He set the book down, then looked at me. "I feel safe, Mom." Just that. I didn't rush to respond. I closed my eyes, let the words settle, then opened them and nodded. His smile was small, grateful, real. Later, I washed dishes while he stepped outside to call a friend. The sink steamed, the faucet hummed. I felt the kind of peace that doesn't come from certainty, but from surviving uncertainty together. When I went to bed, his shoes were by the door, his jacket on the peg, everything normal. But in the morning, he was gone. Not far. Just out early, I assumed, until I saw it. A small square of paper tucked beneath my coffee mug. His handwriting, neat, measured. "Thank you for letting me be me." And somehow, it was the most complete sentence he'd ever spoken. He said, "Mom," again, and I knew silence was the answer. The message came just after sunrise. I hadn't even poured my coffee yet. The light was still soft, the kind that makes shadows stretch like they're waking too. My phone buzzed once on the kitchen table. Just one word. "Mom?" No context, no punctuation, but my breath caught all the same. It wasn't a question. Not really. It was an invitation. I didn't rush to answer. I set the kettle on, watched the steam curl upward, touched the edge of the note he'd left the day before, still tucked beside the sugar bowl. Then I typed back, steady and soft. "Yes, honey, nothing else." I didn't need to ask where he was or why he was quiet all night. The note had said more than any explanation could. Seconds later, the phone rang. I answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said, voice rough from sleep or nerves, or both. "Hey," I replied. There was silence on the line, but not the strained kind. The kind that means someone is choosing words with care. "I just needed to say it out loud," he said finally. "That I'm okay. I'm glad. The job's good," he added. "They're giving me more hours. Said I might move into a lead role soon." "You deserve that." "And I've been looking at apartments closer to the center. Not big, just something with space and quiet." "That sounds like a good next step." He paused again. "I was worried you'd think I was disappearing again." I smiled into the phone. "I know the difference now." Another silence, this one briefer. "I'm proud of you," I added. "For doing it your way." He cleared his throat. "Thanks." We talked a little more. About logistics. About Emma's upcoming birthday. About whether we should try that new breakfast place next week. But mostly, we just lingered on the line. Like we were standing beside each other in the hallway, not ready to say goodbye. "Remember when I first said Mom?" he asked suddenly. I laughed. "You were almost 2. You threw a spoon at my face, then said it like a dare." He chuckled. "Sounds about right." "I've loved that word ever since," I said. "I didn't always make it easy to say," he replied. "You didn't have to." We stayed on the phone for another minute, neither of us ready to end the call, but both knowing we needed to. "I should get going," he said finally. "Work starts early today." "Go ahead. I'll see you soon?" "You will?" He paused. "Love you, Mom." "I love you too." The call ended, but the moment didn't. I stood in the kitchen a while, letting the quiet return, letting it fold around me without fear. The sunlight had crept across the countertop, warm and gold and still. I poured my coffee, sat by the window, took one long sip, then closed my eyes. No music, no noise, just breathe. Light. And the word I'd waited so long to hear, spoken not with urgency, but with trust. And in that silence, I heard everything I'd ever hoped for. The sound of a new beginning.